So, 2-wood, mini driver, what are they, what do they do? 4 of them here, TaylorMade, Callaway, the Titleist and the PXG. We're going to hit shots with the weight in both weight back and weight forward positions where it applies, off the ground and off the tee, look at the data, see how they feel, but give you an insight as to what each one does, most importantly why and who it might suit. So, a lot of hitting, a lot of data, check it out. So first up we're going to start with the TaylorMade, the R7. We're using the 13.5 in this and the Callaway because the Titleist and the PXG are 13-degree heads. So we're keeping the loft as consistent as possible so that it's like for like testing and using exactly the same shaft in all 4 heads. So there is fewer variables as possible. Going to start with the weight back, going to hit off the tee and off the ground. And then really just talk through what the performance changes are and what you can expect to see out of each one. So I'm going to start with this off the tee. So very, very classic look. They've been very clever, I think, bringing back that R7, but almost like the super quad styling, which was very, very popular. Yeah, really sleek looking head. Sits nicely behind the ball too. Quite a solid feeling head. It's interesting. You sometimes don't really know from a feel point of view on kind of first hits quite how they're going to feel relative to other heads, but it's really solid sounding feeling head. Yeah, and a little bit off center, definitely stays with the hit well. So I think one of the things that really stood out is how solid this head feels. But that more from the sound of the context, not a harsh tinny note. It's a really nice solid hit, and actually what I enjoyed in particular was hitting off the ground, which might sound a bit strange because this is it's the mini driver. They don't really talk about it as a 2-wood, but actually off the ground, that lower part of the face actually felt really solid, which I expect it to feel almost a bit less easy to get off the ground, but nice note, sits well. That flat sole there really finds a nice sort of level seating point, and the fact that stays very level across the bottom as well, it doesn't cant up, means that the face isn't rocking, or the head's not rocking back and forth. It really finds a really nice sort of stable seated position, which is really nice off the ground too. But going over the data, we'll start with the weight back, which is where we start off with that data. Felt really stable. I think between the 2, weight forward, weight back, we can see a couple of miles an hour ball speed. The efficiency, the smash factor is that bit higher with weight forward, which it should be. In principle, it's a little bit faster with the weight closer to the face. But there isn't a vast discrepancy in spin. I expect to see more of a differential in spin. It's not a high spin setting at the back. It's just a little bit more forgiving. Certainly off the ground in particular, that felt really comfortable off the deck. You haven't got to really trap into it. I expected to need to get into the bottom of the ball a little bit more, but actually, tried a couple of kind of squeezing it and picking it, and similarly off the tee. And actually, both it comes out fairly strong. A launch, it's not a kind of moonball launch, especially relative to loft, but it didn't feel hard work to get flighted. Now, granted, these I was trying to keep around the 100-mile-an-hour mark on speed, which is relatively fast for a lot of amateurs. So it's going to be easier for me to see peak height, but actually, the launch angle, it didn't feel hard work to get away. The head felt very stable, and so off the ground, I think that's a real strong point to this. Be interesting to see how that compares to the very kind of pointedly kind of described 2-woods from Titleist and PXG, rather than it being a mini driver. Off the tee, easy to flight. Certainly weight forward felt fast, and seemed like it felt like it was coming off a little lower spin, whereas actually looking at the data, the spin's really, really similar. So now, different players might see different results with that, but for me, the launch angle was different. I hit up on the back weighted head just a little bit more for that batch of shots, so that augments the launch angle a little bit more. So it has picked launch angle up a bit, and we see that off the ground. It's a 3/4 of a degree off the ground, couple of degrees, 2.5 degrees off a tee. Some of that's angle of attack, but definitely a little bit more launch, but not high in spin, but felt a bit more stable. So I think for someone who hits it more like a driver and sweeps up on it, the weight forward just keeps that flight down and forwards a little bit more. But if you're using it more as a utility driver fairway wood, weight back really solid. That's really quite impressive. I like that. And it's not just it looks nice, they've really done a good job with that. So moving on to PXG's Secret Weapon, what a name. A little bit more compact. This is very much more of the sort of two wood, the oversized fairway wood. And so the scale of the head's a little bit smaller as a result. Still got plenty of weight opportunities to move the weight around heel and toe and front and back. We're going to use front and back for this one in particular so that we could get a direct comparison with the other heads. But yeah, a little bit smaller. Yeah, very distinctive, a little fewer face markings, but more the two-wood side of things. So we've got two of these. The Titleist is more like this, and then the Elyte Triple Diamond, the Elyte Mini is very much the mini driver. So move on to this. Let's see how that performs. Yeah, so straight away noticeable that a less centered hit just feels like it wobbles a little bit more, feels a bit less stable than the slightly bigger head of the TaylorMade. And funny, having hit the TaylorMade, this now looks just that little bit. It does, it is that bit smaller, but you do feel like you've got a little bit less head to hit with, to get away with, particularly off a tee. Yeah, so the PXG head being that bit smaller, the one thing I would say from those hits is it feels just a happier head off the ground. It feels better to hit off the deck. The TaylorMade head was solid, but this just felt like there was more guts behind the strike. Because it's that bit smaller, the weight sits a little bit lower, it's a bit close to the face. Just felt that that's more where this head is designed for. And heavyweight back, that bottom set of data here, you can see spin's actually pretty good, but there's not great ball speed, and part of the reason for that, club speed's a bit lower, but off a tee, it really has to be teed right down by the ground, because anything that's teed up slightly, it can easily catch above the center of gravity line, so you lose a bit of ball speed, it gears spin off. So it actually doesn't do too badly for distance, because the spin goes low, but it definitely, you can feel the head twist and give and lose that bit of solidity to the contact, but particularly with that weight back, it lowers the CG a little bit, center of gravity, so it makes it easier to catch effectively high on the face, and you get a bit of a dead spot. So it just doesn't feel as solid as the TaylorMade did off the tee. Weight forward, better. Definitely better off a tee weight forward. There's a bit more ball speed off of it, and it felt a little bit better to hit, but it's still 145 efficiency. You're still losing out a little bit more than I think we'll find on the other heads. But off the ground, that felt lovely. It is that smaller head size than the TaylorMade that we just hit. But again, low on the face felt like where it was meant to be hit, which might sound like a bit of an odd comment, but it felt like that's where the mass of the head was. So it felt more like this is an oversized fairway wood. Weight back, quite solid. Off the deck, sort of 3,000 sort of mid-spin. Weight forward, took 3/4 of a degree off in terms of launch angle, but took about a couple of hundred revs of spin off. Again, felt that little bit more solid, just more of a kind of a driving, going shot, but a slight miss off the ground felt a better contact than one off the tee. And I wouldn't necessarily say you had to kind of trap it and squeeze it, but this is a head felt like it gave you that option a little bit more. So if you're someone who gets a bit on top and drives down onto it, squeezes the ball a little bit and de-lofts a bit, this head felt like that was more, there was just more head to get into the back of the ball for that. The bigger head, the TaylorMade we just hit, felt just that little bit more hollow at that strike. It felt low on the face, and was definitely that bit happier off the tee, although very solid off the ground. This one, for me, this is a strong fairway wood, or someone who just wants to just tee it up like a really good lie on the fairway and get onto it and drive it out low and forwards. I think that's where that has a bit of a strength. Weight forward, weight back, a little more solid feel off the weight forward. Didn't affect spin massively. Interesting enough, similar to what we found off the R7 quad, but launch angle about a degree difference. Just drops that flight down a touch without having to de-loft it, but yeah, this more of a fairway wood. So if you're enjoying the content with the product reviews, fitting videos, and all the data capture videos as well, check out our latest fitting video. Chris, who came in recently that we fitted out for irons, have a look at his fitting and see what you can glean from that as well. So Titleist GT280. Now Titleist very much call this a two-wood. So it's, again, like the PXG, it's a little more compact in terms of sizing, 280cc, rather than up at kind of the 340 odd of the TaylorMade and the Callaway. So this one's designed to be good for ball speed with the bigger face and the tech that's in that, but not necessarily a cannon bomber overhead. This is more to sit in that halfway house. So again, weight back forward, see how this comes out, but I think many people would agree this is probably the prettiest of the heads. Not that that means anything other than looks. So it's a classic Titleist feel. It's not a harsh tinny note. It's a solid sound and feel. Interesting enough, I would liken this to the PXG versus the TaylorMade Offer T, in that that one wasn't quite middle, and it kind of felt like the club didn't quite give me as much help as the bigger head did. This one with the white grooves on the face, you can see the loft a little bit more easily, which some players are really going to like. So again, like the PXG Offer T, I didn't feel like this one was quite as comfortable off a tee. It is absolutely fine. The ball speed's good off it, actually better than the PXG for ball speed. Just the strike point didn't feel quite as nice. The head didn't feel, it felt fine, but the moment it went off the ground, it felt like that was really where the head was meant to be hit from. Again, a bit lower on the face, and that had a bit extra stability than the PXG off the ground. I thought this felt really, really solid and stable and consistent off the deck in particular. So just a really comfortable club off the ground. It's not a particular kind of cannon of a head. It's not quite as low spin, I don't think, in the main, although the spin numbers look pretty strong, but in terms of weight forward, it's not a low spin cannon. You know, that's slightly lower on the face, retain good ball speed. The spin window is pretty good, but felt like you get a bit more of a hot ball flight out of, you know, potentially the TaylorMade, or maybe even the PXG when you got it absolutely spot on. Although having said that, the last shot off the ground, I swept a little bit more, and that brought the spin down more. So you can kind of get into it. You can hit it both ways. You can trap this one, and it brings the launch down and moderates the spin up a little bit, or you can sweep it, and as long as it's not kind of open faced, actually that brought the spin down a little bit more. But then you might come to get a little low on the face and get a squirty one out of it. But very much the, as I say, Titleist, it is a 2-wood, it's not a mini driver, and I think that really echoes in consistency of ball speed off the ground. But it just felt the best at collecting the ball off the deck so far. Obviously not hit the Callaway yet, but I would view this as something you're looking at as a strong, kind of lower going shot off the fairway, but a moderate spin tee shot. It's not an out and out bomber, whereas we've got lower spin off the tee out of the TaylorMade for sure with that weight forward. So yeah, more of a fairway wood, but you're very, very consistent off the deck in particular. Yeah, really good for that. So finally coming onto the Elyte Mini. Now this one doesn't give me the option to shift the weight around in the same way. So we've just got the one off the tee and off the ground batch of data with this. Very much a mini driver, you know, that's what it's called, and I'm expecting this to be a little stronger off the tee and a bit harder off the ground, and potentially that little bit lower spin. But yeah, the Callaway was good last year. The AI Smoke Mini was a nice head and really good for ball speed, so it'll be interesting to see how this one stacks up relative to the others. So off a tee first, this should be where it's strongest. So Elyte Mini, immediately off a tee, you could feel how stable, going back to the bigger head, having hit the two smaller ones, much more stable across the face off a tee. Felt so much happier off a tee, this head, and the sizing and scaling of it. Just felt like that was where it was meant to be hit. What surprised me is I didn't think it would feel that good off the ground. Whilst the head size, I think, makes it feel a little less comfortable behind the ball. You kind of feel like you've got less of the face to get into the back of the ball. Ironically, the smaller head feels like it's just meant to be hit from there. It actually collected it really pretty well. I was pleasantly surprised by how it felt. You do know you're catching it a bit lower on the face versus the Titleist and the PXG. If you get it a little bit off centre, particularly to the heel, you can just feel that head twist and move around a little bit more. However, having said that, it was definitely better than I expected. It's just, I think the size of the head makes it feel like it's harder to get it airborne. But you know, and I wouldn't, you know, the 11.5 in this, wouldn't really fancy getting that off the ground. But at the 13.5, where there's that bit more loft, really quite comfortable. However, the spin fluctuations a little bit more, and I think that's really where it shows itself off the ground. Your ball speed good, but looking at the data here, there's a 670 rev tolerance on spin. That's quite big. You get a 230 off the tee, so you can see where stripe one on the face for this head, making a big difference in consistency of flight. But having said that, it didn't feel unplayable off the ground, and so did a little better than I expected. But you know, certainly happier off the tee for that for sure. So as a roundabout, round up. what is best? Yeah, that's what we started the video with. So, right, let's target best in class for distance. Now, data-wise, best in class for distance, I'm going to scroll down here and we're going to look at the R7. So R7, weight forward off a tee, but weight forward, 149 efficiency. None of the others got that across the board in terms of average. That also got the spin down, one of the lowest spins as well. So you've got strongest ball speed, strong spin, and that's averaging just, it's a few yards, but it's a little bit hotter, a bit more ball speed. So that maxes out the ball speed for you. But with the amount of weight you're shifting forward in the head, that's no great surprise. And TaylorMade have always been great for distance. Consistency. What gives the most consistency? Well, certainly off the ground, has to go to the Titleist. From a ball speed consistency point of view, you know, what we're looking at with the Titleist here, looking at these tolerance numbers, 1.8, 1.8, 1.6, 1.2. So really, really consistent off a tee and off the ground for ball speed. But in terms of collecting it off the deck and feeling like it's a really a fairway wood. The PXG was close to this, and no surprise, these are both the smaller heads, but the PXG lacked a bit of ball speed. You know, the Titleist is giving me 148s, 149s from an efficiency point of view, PXG 145, so it just lacks that little bit of ball speed. And whilst it's a good all-round head, that means it kind of misses out in each category. So, you know, for distance, you've got the TaylorMade. For consistency, across the board in terms of fairway and tee, you've got the Titleist. You know, both the other heads are good, and you know, potentially is a kind of solely teeing off option. I think the Elyte feels very stable, but it's a bit more intimidating off the ground. Whilst it was a surprise, you haven't got the weight adjustments quite to dial it in quite as much. I think if I was going to go for my all-around favourite, what would I go for if I had to pick one to go out and play with tomorrow? I'm going to take this one because ball speed's good, but that versatility of weight positioning to dial in to say, right, today I'm going to play it much more off a tee, whack the weight forward, more for distance. Today I'm playing it more as a fairway would, whack the weight back. Just that extra bit of versatility. You've got it off the Titleist, but I think as the extra strength off a tee that the TaylorMade gives you from a distance point of view, that just ekes it. But if you want to get your hands on one of these, you better get in there quick because these are limited.